Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Nick Costa.
And I am Adam Beetham.
And we are the Trident Consulting Firm, a consulting firm that's here today to provide on-point solutions for all your analytical needs. So what we're going to do today, the first thing we're going to do is identify the task that you, the Army Corps of Engineers, have given us today. After that, we're going to go into some key details and facts surrounding the Dakota Access Pipeline that we're here to talk about today. Following that, we're going to identify key stakeholders in this situation and any concerns that they may have. After that, we'll lay out an ethical analysis of the situation at hand and use that analysis to provide recommendations as to how the Army Corps of Engineers can move forward in a responsible and ethical manner.
Now, the task that we have been charged with via the case packet is to evaluate the financial, legal, and ethical obligations of the Army Corps of Engineers in their upcoming decision on the Dakota Access Pipeline. And it is the belief of Trident Consulting that if you break things down into the universal, the national, and the local level, and take into account all three of those considerations on each that level, then the more way forward would be with the continued progress of the Dakota Access Pipeline.
So, some important pieces of information surrounding the Dakota Access Pipeline are imperative so that we can analyze the situation in a more robust manner. Firstly, what is the pipeline? From an engineering perspective, it's a piece of pipe. You put it under the ground. It's 30 inches in diameter, and it goes from the Bakken oil sands of North Dakota to refineries in Illinois. A contested piece of the route is very close to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. It's about 1.5 miles away, where the pipeline would travel under Lake Oahe along the route of 8 other pipelines that actually travel closer to the lake than the proposed route for Dakota Access.
When addressing budgetary concerns, the main concern we need to think about is the $3.78 billion currently invested in this project. Now, the main company backing this funding is the Energy Transfer Partners, but there are also open stock and credit holders from 27 other conglomerates.
Additionally, what's the point of the pipeline in the first place? Why does Energy Transfer Partners and any other partners like Sunoco want the pipeline? And the short answer is that rail is bad. Transporting oil over rail is very, very inefficient monetarily, and it also has potential to cause damage to the environment. And as a company, Energy Transfer Partners wants to bolster their profit as well as their image and appear as a company that cares about the environment and bolsters their images as such. Additionally, an important piece of analyzing the situation is identifying key stakeholders. And the way that Trident Consulting has broken up the stakeholders is into 2 distinct groups. One with a more global focus and one with a focus that is specific to the Dakota Access Pipeline as a project. That group with more global focus, concerns about pipelines as a concept, includes environmentalists, the oil industry, and energy policymakers.
And those with a more local focus concerned about the Dakota Access Pipeline specifically are the Energy Transfer Partners, Lake Oahe, and the Standing Rock Sioux.
And then finally, perhaps the most important stakeholder in the situation is you, the Army Corps of Engineers. Because you find yourself caught in between these 2 groups of stakeholders, juggling their concerns and unsure about how to move forward in a responsible manner. And given the analysis that we will project, we feel that there is a way to do so. And that analysis is one where we consider a universal, national, and local perspective, and within each of those perspectives, we consider the financial, legal, and ethical obligations of the Army Corps. At a universal level, it is imperative that the Army Corps of Engineers understand what impact the Dakota Access Pipeline can have for the global energy economy, as well as whether or not the project respects the autonomy of any persons, states, or groups involved. And then lastly, from an ethical standpoint, it's imperative to understand that if you can think about John Rawls for a second and his idea of position of advantage, that beings who have power over this earth that we can both harm it or hurt it. And from a moral perspective, we should definitely make decisions that help instead of hurt.
Now, on the national level, when it comes to financial concerns, we need to address the idea of energy independence and whether or not the Dakota Access Pipeline is a move towards that. On the legal considerations, we need to understand the idea of sovereignty and whether or not this respects the sovereignty of all peoples involved. And then finally, bring us to the ethical considerations. We need to address the idea of the social contract theory and as to whether the decisions of the Army Corps of Engineers are respecting the rights of the American peoples to make decisions regarding America.
And then lastly, and perhaps most importantly, are local considerations specific to Dakota Access. In terms of finances, we're considering the cost-benefit analysis of a pipeline as a whole. Pipelines in general are worthwhile investments. You spend nearly $4 billion to build Dakota Access, but in nearly 1.5 years it can pay itself off, contingent upon the completion of its construction. Additionally, in terms of the law, the Army Corps of Engineers must still consider any validity in the claims that invoke treaties from years past, for instance, the Treaty of Laramie of 1851, and whether or not the Sioux really do have a claim to that. And then lastly, and perhaps the most important concept, is one of ethics, a deontological perspective. The Standing Rock Sioux cannot be looked at as a mere means, as Immanuel Kant would say. The Energy Transfer Partners cannot use them as a legal hurdle that they climb over so that they can start printing money. And from that framework, Trident Consulting feels that the Dakota Access Pipeline can be described as a step in the right direction of our ideal world, so long as those core tenets are upheld. And the way that we break down those tenets, again, is at the universal, national, and local level. At the universal level, it is imperative that the Army Corps of Engineers, again, understands that the pipeline should minimize damage to the environment, that no entity oversteps any ethical or legal boundary, and that the energy industry is, in fact, on the path to reform because of the pipeline. And the Corps has done a fantastic job of doing so in their significant and in-depth environmental and scientific reviews.
Addressing the national level, we need to ensure that any actions taken by the Army Corps of Engineers upholds the expectations of the American people, respects the rights of Native Americans as a whole, and is a move towards U.S. energy independence. And again, we can largely say that the Army Corps of Engineers has satisfied these criteria, as continued construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline does provide energy and an economical boost to America. It is respectful of Native American people based off of the vast and extensive environmental reviews done on behalf of the Native American peoples at their request, and it is undoubtedly a move towards U.S. energy independence, as this is U.S. petroleum being shipped to U.S. distributors to power the U.S. economy.
So what's the problem? If the Army Corps of Engineers has met these first national and universal considerations to a considerable degree, where's the problem? The problem essentially arises at the local level. There seems to be a breakdown in communication. The Army Corps of Engineers has met their legal obligations under the National Historic Preservation Act, Section 106. They've met with tribal chieftains and tribal chiefs on over 250 occasions. But despite those 250 meetings, something still seems to be awry. The Standing Rock Sioux still seem to feel that they are treated as that mere means, and therefore it's morally incumbent upon the Army Corps of Engineers to remedy that before they move forward.
Our task when we began was to analyze this on the financial, the legal, and the ethical levels, and we have done this by further breaking it down into the subcategories of universal, national, and local. If and only if the obligations previously laid out can be sufficiently met, then it is our strong recommendation that the Army Corps of Engineers continues with the recommendation to proceed with the building of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Thank you.